Oh, good.
All
You
good.
look bigger today, not the previous ones.
Do you know what? It's funny. People always say that. They say,
yeah.
"Oh, you look really small on camera," and then I see you in person. You're like, "Oh, okay."
Not really small, but smaller compared to
Yeah,
to the gym and stuff.
it's funny, right? Well, I guess we can actually start there because we met at the strongman classes.
Yep.
And yeah, just good fun, really. Like really strong, and it's been really fun, sort of seeing you like lift heavy shit, and both of us sort of going to that mental space together.
Yeah, 100%. Look, like for me, training has been a big part of my life because but my father was a professional soccer player in Greece. This is where I grew up, so he put me straight away, obviously, to sports and everything else. And as far as I remember myself, like I'm just been playing sports and going to the gym and everything. Played water polo professionally for a bit. Tried all sorts of different sports, and at the gyms and everything, it's always Yeah. So I love like lifting heavy set, as you said, and especially because I'm actually turning 41 in 2 weeks. So I feel for us men, like the older you get, in general, like the harder we have to work also, like to even if we want to progress and grow and, keep our body like in a really good state. It's very, very important.
Yeah, well, you certainly don't look like you're in your 40s, mate, that's for sure.
It's the strongman workouts at Beyond Fitness.
Hey, I think they are, mate. Genuinely, like it brings me back to those like hunter-gatherer days. You're just like moving heavy shit around like these, like our ancestors.
100%.
Yeah, and I love that because I've always had in my mind when I have a kid, I'm just going to get them doing sports as soon as they come out of the womb. Like just expose them to all this stuff. So.
They're probably gonna come out with a 6-pack, bro.
That's the plan.
Yeah, 100%.
That's wicked. I wonder how your sort of childhood shapes you then, because it sounds like you had a nice positive influences growing up, perhaps outside looking in. But I would love to hear how that shapes you into the man you are today.
Well, I don't know about the positive influences and all that stuff, but definitely, we all go through childhood stuff, like, we all have traumas and everything else. Growing up, like, I always felt, until I started doing work on myself, that I had the perfect childhood. My mom and dad were perfect and all the stuff, and I feel a lot of us, we actually get stuck on that, this idolizing our parents and keeping them there for as long as we can. So, but the reality was very different. Like for me, in Greece, it was like pretty rough, like growing up as a boy in general. And I had a lot of experiences that really shaped my life in very profound ways. I definitely had like, the early childhood stuff. So for example, because I've been obviously like so deep on my journey at the moment, like I'm 41, I started like probably like 8-9 years ago, like really diving deep into the traumas and everything else and doing that work. So, for example, like my earliest trauma was literally with getting wrapped on the umbilical cord as I got out, like from as I got birthed essentially into this reality. And then also at the same time, like I never actually had the ability to get breastfed from my mom. So that for a young boy, for an infant, creates like a big problem because you don't create that bond with the mother. And then at the same time, I was 4 weeks premature. So I was basically like very small. I think I was 2.6 kilos when I was born. And malnourished also because I had to go on the formula like straight away. So as far as I know, even from my parents, basically the first 2 years of my life, I was basically crying. So, it was straight pretty intense. So that left like a big gap within myself. And this is what I have realized like through working on myself, that essentially that I never actually had like a soft space inside of me so I can actually like relax. So I was always like very intense and very, seeking challenges and just pushing hard for as much as I can. And literally going into this cycle consistently of pushing, exhaustion, and then trying to get out of that, which was very hard. But also, then things became even more intense. Because in my teenage years, I actually had a car accident when I was 16, where my best friend was driving and he was going with 160 kilometers and basically lost the control of the car, and we crashed with 140 kilometers on a wall. So I wasn't wearing seatbelt, no airbag in the car, basically. So I'm lucky to be alive. And the crash happened. I don't remember anything apart from getting inside the car. And then essentially I woke up for the first time inside an elevator with three doctors on top of me and my dad. And I'm like, what happened to me? Like, it was so weird getting inside the car and all of a sudden, waking up. It was literally like a nightmare. And then spent 12 days in a hospital, trying to obviously surgery because I had broken my femur in half. My face was completely destroyed. They thought I lost my eye because my eye was completely closed up to here. I had to get 4 bags of blood. So it was very intense. And then I had also a complete identity collapse. Because think about that, as a young man at 16 years old, I was an athlete, I was the pretty boy and all that stuff. And all of a sudden I was in a hospital on the bed, full of pain. My body got destroyed. I lost 11, 12 kilos, even my image, my face. So I had to sit with, something that it was very profound for that age,
Yeah. It sounds like that first period of your life was just intensity. And you mentioned something there, you kind of had an identity crisis, if you like, because all the stuff that you identified with, your ego identified with, it's kind of taken away from you. So it's like, okay, right, who actually am I? And from what I've observed in this podcast and through my own journey is whenever we have these difficult moments, we try and cling on to our older identity. It's kind of like our ego is almost dying in a way, and a lot of the time we stay stuck because we're clinging on to our older self, right? Whereas the reality is, I think all these moments are an opportunity for us to reinvent ourselves.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that was your mindset at the time, or did it take you a while to, sort of find a new direction in life?
Figure it out, yeah. So the thing is, there's post-traumatic stress disorder essentially, but then there's post-traumatic growth also at the same time. So for me, because I had a dad that he always pushed me hard, essentially, and whenever there was pain and everything, he literally led me there. So I learned from a very young age to actually go towards pain. So the thing is, sitting in that situation with so much pain, it was the biggest pain I've ever experienced, physically, emotionally, in every way. And then at the same time, also, I feel that experience, the trauma that has left me with, especially physically and my nervous system, was so dear that it was very, very hard afterwards to deal with it. Especially at that age, back then nobody was talking about PTSD and all that stuff. So basically I was left with this, the way it felt, to tell you the truth, it was literally this void inside of me, almost that I got so fractured psychologically that I didn't know who I was basically anymore, inside my psyche and my mind. So I was very lost, essentially after that.
Yeah,
it was very, very hard.
I can imagine. But you touched upon one point there where you were kind of you were confronting the fear, right? And obviously it seems in this instance it was whoa, a huge jump. But then I think what's happened in sort of our different generations is that actually we've been grown up thinking that fear is a bad thing and it's something that should be avoided. So I actually think you can go too far in the other direction where you're playing life too safe. So have you noticed, okay, actually there were some benefits to your experiences? Because I feel as though these tough times in moderation can make us who we are today, and it's obviously made you and who you are today and has put you on a certain path. So do you think there are sort of benefits to having that really tough sort of upbringing?
Yeah. I completely agree with that. Especially for us men, doing hard stuff and actually going through difficulties is very, very important, because this is literally what makes us also men. And comfort, essentially, and stagnation kills all the dreams. So for us men, if we actually even consciously, we do not seek the challenge, the difficulty, facing the pains and the fears and all the stuff, we will never reach our potential as men. So that's the thing. And it's really funny because through that experience also, it was very unique for me in another way, because I was inside the hospital and everybody was trying to make me laugh. So I had at the same time going through the biggest pain of my life and psychologically like struggling so much. But then everybody was trying to make me laugh. And I think that experience there, it was actually the most I've ever laughed in my life. So what happened, that's my theory essentially. I feel that I started associating like pain with pleasure and laughter. So after that, I literally became addicted to pain. Yeah, so everybody that knows me knows that literally like pain for me is pleasure essentially. It's a very interesting one.
That's really got me thinking about my own journey now.
Yeah.
Hang on, I fucking love like these fucking. Well, you could even look at like intense workouts, for example, or that's
because
really,
you feel alive, man. Like that's the thing. The most alive that you're gonna feel is literally while you're going through situations like that.
Yeah, this is why I say if you're feeling overwhelmed or stuck or in self-doubt, just fucking move. I think just fucking do like really hard shit and just get addicted to that feeling of endorphins, right? And I've even found like I've even contemplated the question, am I just addicted to the high of exercise sometimes? And because without it, I think I'd go pretty insane, right?
Yeah. Well, the high and the peaks, it's always like an interesting one, whether it happens through substances and drugs or even training. Like a lot of people, they don't actually understand that they're escaping through training, essentially, avoiding to deal with their stuff through consistently training. How many people have you seen actually doing double sessions a day, 6 days a week, plus working? You always see them, like a lot of them, they don't progress also because the body never recovers and rests. And they just can't stop at all. It's their drug of choice, essentially.
And that's why, again, people get addicted to work almost because it's a form of escapism, right? It's like, okay, if I can work on this shit, then I don't have to confront my own problems. This is such an interesting point. It's interesting, though, with the whole laughing thing, because I've always wondered this about my childhood, because I think I was brought up with the idea that, you're feeling pain, you feel bad. Okay, it's happy, let's laugh, everything's going to be okay. But I wonder, is that I don't know if there's a universal sort of right or wrong way to go about things, right? But is that sort of invalidating people's emotions in a way, from your experience?
Yeah. Like you look, especially for us men, and in a lot of the cultures and all the stuff, we grow up, and essentially for us men, if you feel that it's considered like weak. If anybody sees you crying or anything like that, you're sad, like straight away, don't do it. So we learn how to suppress our emotions from such a young age, and then first of all, we disconnect from our bodies and the energy also essentially, and then we have all this intensity stuck inside our nervous system and our body, and we don't know how to deal with it essentially.
Yeah, well, that's a big point as well. Whenever we feel these emotions, every time we don't let it out, it just stays within us. And a lot of people, I think, don't realize that, as you've mentioned, that this energy, if you don't release it, it stays in there. And this is why we get triggered now, right? It's why we have reactions to stuff, because that energy is still in our body. And I think that concept can seem a bit strange or alien to a lot of people. Yeah, I find this whole concept super, super interesting. I think, we're taught, okay, you shouldn't be emotional. And I've realized in my own journey that I'm naturally a very sensitive person and a very emotional person. And now I'd say I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. And I've probably cried more in the last like half a year than I had in the last.
Ever before.
Yeah, exactly, right? I don't know if you've had a similar experience. You do you sort of process your emotions a lot better now, I guess, or?
Oh yeah, 100%. Look, like for me, I was really, I was living essentially with anger for most of my life, especially after that experience. 2 years after that, I also had another a near-death experience, essentially, where I got involved in a fight, and I got surrounded by 20 men, and some of them, they stabbed me from behind, and they hit me with all sorts of things. So I was lucky to protect my face, but I got hit from behind and stabbed and everything else. So that was another very traumatic experience. And then that also, I had the freeze response essentially on the nervous system, because I had no one to ask support. I was completely surrounded, and essentially like you literally freeze, and the best you can do is just protect yourself, So then after that, like I had so much anger and shame and everything else, and essentially I lived for the next probably 14, 15 years, like full of anger, just uncontrollable. And I would go, and every weekend I would just go and try and find ways how to release it by going and watching my brother play soccer and having fights outside, and like literally every weekend, because I just didn't know what to do with that energy at all.
Yeah, not having an outlet for it. But
Yeah.
then I think it's also important to mention this anger. You're going to seek external things to justify your anger, but that thing itself wasn't making you angry, right? I think a lot of the time it's
what we have inside. Yeah,
it's the sadness, right, from not being heard or listened to. So I guess back then you didn't have anyone really supporting you. You didn't have anyone you could open up to, which is, I think a game changer for a lot of people. Just having someone who sees you and listens to you is so important, right?
Yeah. That's why I became that person now, like, and actually support people in those ways. The amount of times, because I work with men for the past close to 6 years now, the amount of times that I had people on my sessions and all the stuff, men specifically, and having their first experience of allowing the emotion slowly to come up. And you can see the resistance, you can see the fear, am I supposed to be doing that? But as soon as they feel safe and the energy actually like expresses, it's a completely different thing. And they start to feel, and then all of a sudden, as it goes away, they start laughing. It's always the same thing.
Yes.
Because they're like, it wasn't that bad. I feel really good now.
Yeah, 100%. So much to sort of go into there.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, right, so obviously you went through a lot of trauma and difficult experiences, right? Is that part of the healing process then? Where do people start? Because you could even go further back, right? So there's even before thinking, okay, I've got these wounds, but even before then, a lot of people don't even realize that they've got these wounds. Like you said, they think they've got a normal upbringing.
Yeah.
And it's only upon reflection that they realize, okay, actually there was a lot going on here, and there's a lot of wounds from my past. So first part of that question is, okay, how do people actually realize that they didn't have a normal upbringing? Because I certainly, how do people cultivate that awareness, first of all?
Yeah.
And then second of all, what the fuck do they do when they've had this awareness and their perception of the world has shattered, if you like?
Completely, yeah. It's very shocking in the beginning, like to actually see that essentially you're living a lie. That's how it feels, because you're living completely your conditioning and essentially your egoic identity path, essentially. So for me, no matter what you do, I feel at some point it's gonna knock on your door, at some point. Like as soon as you reach around 30, mid-30s and all the stuff, some people start earlier, all of a sudden the intensity starts to come up, because essentially the nervous system is so full. You've been through a lot from childhood onwards, and essentially there's no more capacity inside the nervous system. So that's what happens, and essentially you reach to that point of overwhelm. Either it will express as depression, it will express as, substance abuse, all the coping mechanisms that we know and all the stuff. And essentially you will have to look at yourself. Like you can't anymore stop pretending that everything is good. So that's the thing. So it's gonna knock on your door, and then it's basically either you look at yourself properly in the mirror and actually admit to yourself, okay, I'm not doing well and all the stuff, I need to seek support, and it starts from there,
Okay, so that I find really interesting, right? Because I can think of some people who I've come across, right? And the ego is so strong, there's so many layers, right? And again, I don't know what's happening in their life, but you can see just like, right, they're hiding something, all these pent up emotions, right? And they're hiding it. So, but when their ego is so strong, I wonder, right, when you're in that position, like what can you even get through? I know you said that time is going to come eventually, but it just seems like some people have built up such a strong wall that no matter how stressed they'll get, they're just going to keep on going, right?
Yeah, but then you will have at some point like physical manifestations. So that's the thing.
Oh, like illness or?
Yeah, it will come in the form of disease, it will come in the form of something, like that's the thing. The body, no matter how the mind tries to protect everything, at some point you're gonna get the signs, and they're gonna be pretty intense. That's the reality, So, but yeah, some people also like they're just okay, like just going by like that, and in this lifetime they will never actually do that. It's also the soul component also, like, the other day we were talking a bit about spirituality and all the stuff when we were catching up at the gym. And essentially this is a big part of the experience also. Because if you don't unify mind, body and spirit, and you're just going by your life like a robot, like just the egoic mind, yeah, you can make money, you can, acquire like materials and all the stuff, but you're not gonna experience like, your soul's calling and a deeper purpose and everything else. Some people are just okay, being like that, and
Yeah, and I've kind of learned to let go of trying to control other people. I think you go through a period where, oh wow, you see like
we need to save everybody.
Yeah, everyone needs to see the lights, But I think some people, they're just in their own world, and like you've alluded to, I think it has to come from within a really deep desire to change. And if they don't have that, then they'll probably stay the same. But I think actually, Joe Dispenza is a great person if you're curious about this stuff, but you're still a little bit skeptic about spirituality. I think he's a great example of someone who bridges that gap, right?
Yeah, he obviously works through a lot like the quantum field and all sorts of things and the meditations and everything else. But I feel with his approach is a lot based up here. So it bypasses the body. So the way I view things personally, like I see it as the whole system as a whole. So the mind, body, and spirit, essentially. So for me, if someone wants to do that work, you have to do it in every level. If you really want to experience life to the fullest and actually find a different purpose and literally discover why you came here for, essentially, and serve humanity and all the good stuff. That's the thing. So yeah, because you mentioned before about where you start, you can start with podcasts, you can start obviously reading the books and everything else and changing what you put inside your mind, which is very obviously important. Plus we live at an age now that, we have unlimited amount of information. You can literally find everything and educate yourself on any topic, even with ChatGPT at the moment. There's good things also from the technology that come, 100%. But then you will have to seek essentially mentors and therapists and guides and everything else. That's how it was for me. Because definitely for as long as I was in Greece, I never got exposed to anything. I keep saying I wish I had someone like me to guide me when I was suffering. That's why I became that guy. The guy that I needed when I was younger, this is who I am.
Well, that's an interesting point, because I think that's what we all need to become as men. I think we need to become not only the best possible version of ourselves, but become our own hero, become the version of ourselves or the person that we needed when we were younger to show us the way, right?
Definitely.
I think that's 100% our aim. And yeah, I wanted to explore, because I think a big part of this process is, you've mentioned, right, you have these limiting beliefs on the world and they're very strong. People have very strong beliefs about how they see the world, and it's very difficult to get out of that. So one method you've described there is, looking at resources. Obviously, Joe Dispenza was an example, but
there's so many. Yeah,
there's so many. And you can
hundreds
explore.
of cool people out there.
Oh yeah, there's so many, and like you said, ChatGPT that's just one example of, who can I listen to? And some will resonate, some won't. But again, I think if your curiosity is there, I think eventually you will find some answers.
Yeah.
There's the physical part as well. So there's the knowledge, but then I also wonder in terms of stuck energy, right? So we've discussed how, this energy, if you hold on to it and you don't express your emotions, it stays in your body for years and years and years, right? So what processes do you think people can use to release this unstuck energy?
Yeah. So you probably heard it also yourself so many times that we have to feel in order to heal. It's very, very important. And that's the thing. You can conceptualize everything and, think everything like what you have been through and do the psychological work. But essentially, if you don't connect with the body and essentially the impact that those experiences had inside of you, so that trauma imprints, but at the same time also the emotions, you're not going to go very far. Because it's always going to be, affecting you in many, many ways. Essentially, obviously, breath work is a great tool for that. There's all sorts of somatic practices and modalities nowadays, and I feel especially the last probably 5 to 10 years, there's so much progression into this field that it really has become like something very potent, and people have like so many opportunities actually to actually try something. Then there's also plant medicines. Like there's unlimited of ways to really work through that. For me personally, because through my path I started as a physiotherapist, so I was always like I was trying to figure out my body essentially, because obviously you heard about my experiences. I had so much physical trauma that essentially this is where I looked at first. And I started with physiotherapy, massage therapy and all the stuff. And then progressively I went into breath work and plant medicine and everything else. All sorts of other courses like, about trauma and coaching and everything else. So for me, I've tried everything you can possibly imagine, from all sorts of somatic modalities like kinesiology, body work for trauma release, like different types of breath work, a lot of different stuff, and to actually see what was working for me, first of all, and educate myself, but at the same time, obviously do my healing process. So that's why the way I work with people, I have a lot of different like skills and tools that I can utilize. So depending who I have in front of me and where they're at, I will use I
love that approach.
What's needed.
I love that because, again, there's so many different things out there, so many different approaches, and there's not going to be one thing that works for everyone, right?
Everybody's an individual. You have to find literally what works for you. People will tell you try this, but essentially you need to find what's the best way for you. Not everybody will try like the same way. The same goes also with psychedelics and all the stuff and plant medicine. It's not for everyone. It's not that way to go about like for everyone. Yes, I do believe personally as an individual through my experiences also that they have like a very useful place obviously now, and especially the last 5-10 years, and it will become more and more. But the reality is it's not really for everyone. You have to be really prepared to go there, and it's something that's missing. I feel a lot of people, they actually go to have ceremonies with ayahuasca and all sorts of very powerful like plants, but essentially like they have done a lot of the times no work on themselves. They don't understand the nervous systems. They go to the jungle or they go to so many places and all the stuff, and even there they're not trained in trauma or anything like that, so they will just obviously like serve everyone. That's the thing. And if your window of tolerance is very small, your nervous system is very overwhelmed, and then you have this powerful like agent and you have this profound experience, good luck dealing with that. And then also it's the after the experience, which is the integration and all the stuff, trying to work through that, So it can be very, very intense and confusing.
Yeah, definitely so. And this is where I think you've just said it perfectly, right? Because you listen to people and they haven't taken ayahuasca or anything, and they're saying, oh yeah, no, that fucked this person up. No, don't touch that shit. It's like, if you haven't taken it, then I probably won't listen to your opinion, right? Yeah. But you've mentioned a great point there. It's not the tool itself that is the issue. It's right, is someone ready to receive it? I think that's a super important point. I think I think you've got to be at a stage where you've done a lot of reflection already, perhaps you've maybe been through some tough times, and I think if you go there and your ego is pretty big, and
if you go with that with the ego inside that space, it won't turn out well, bro.
No,
I've seen you many times.
I think so. You've got to kind of be ready to sort of surrender to
exactly that. Like go in a very humble state, and essentially with respect for the experience and the medicine and the facilitator, essentially the shaman, that's gonna actually guide you through the experience. If you go from a place of like I'm gonna be like this and that, and you go and you have multiple cups when it's your first time, you're asking for trouble.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Yeah, it's and I think there's also, as you've mentioned a good point there, there's people who will be better at facilitating this type of thing, right? So,
yeah. That's the thing. You have to do your own research and all the stuff, and actually go to a place that has like obviously like really good obviously reviews and referrals and all the stuff, and it's gonna cater for you specifically. You can't leave it in luck, oh, I'm going on a trip in the jungle or wherever you go, and the first place I find, I'm just going to go there. It's something that you really need to prepare yourself for that. And that's why for me, because I have done all the mistakes also myself personally and the struggles that come with that, and I came the other way, that's why I have that role also, like to educate people, especially because I have a lot of people coming to me to ask me, oh, should I do this or should I do that? I always give them a very obviously educated like advice in regards to what they need to do, but also taking into consideration where exactly they're at and how much work they've done, so I can actually like prepare them like the right way.
And can you sense that pretty well then?
Oh, I can see straight away.
Yeah.
I have a lot of experience now, so.
Oh, I bet.
Plus, I took myself like to very, I told you like I pursue everything with intensity and all the stuff. So I've been to places that I wouldn't recommend it to everyone,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can relate to that. I'm interested to hear about how you found all these tools. Did they all come to you at once? Where did your curiosity sort of lead you back when, like 13, 14 years ago?
Yeah. To tell you the truth, because my dad always was he was pretty overprotective and all the stuff in ways, and I didn't actually have any substances until I was way older. So even, for example, with cannabis, I tried it for the first time when I was 25, which most people, they have it even as early as 13, 14. But the thing is, for me, the experience that really changed me and actually opened up my mind to explore more things was actually my first MDMA experience when I was in Australia. So I think it was 9 years ago. And a friend of mine that were living together, because I had no clue about drugs or anything like that. I was completely vanilla. And we went out one night and he pulls out these pills and all the stuff as we were in a bar with another friend also. And he goes, just have it. I'm like, what is it? Just have it, man. So I had it. And literally, like, I think I went 2 days straight, partied 2 days straight, like put everyone to bed like the first night. And then I kept going by myself because I had this profound experience of having all of my thoughts outside of my mind, essentially, and I could actually access, even back then I realized like I could access my traumas and all the stuff without actually like the emotions and everything else, and it was such a profound experience. So it really broadened my perception and everything, and really like started my journey to explore more. And I realized, because I was so mature by the time I actually had my first proper experience, I actually saw it in a completely different way. I never saw it as I'm gonna party and all the stuff. So for me, after that, anything that I used, I actually used it for self-exploration, and also, just trying to work through what I was experiencing, essentially. So I used them as teachers, essentially.
Well, that's awesome. I was thinking, because a lot of the time, when you're taught about mindfulness in terms of managing your emotions, it will be, okay, cool, observe the thought, don't attach the emotion to it. It's that thought's come up, but it's the emotion, and it's that disconnect between the mind and the body, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I think a lot of people struggle. And the message is, okay, detach the emotions. But I think a lot of people, if they're working on themselves for the first time, they'll find that concept pretty difficult, right? I think the one thing that resonated with me back when I first started it was because I had an incident which really affected me pretty badly, right, when I was 19. And I imagined it was to do with another person. And I imagined whenever the thought came into my mind, I would just envision a boat going along a river.
Yeah.
And I just imagined that person just being on a boat, just like dancing or whatever. And then I'm just watching it pass by. And that's what really helped me separate the emotions from the thoughts, because I'm sort of watching it. I think another example they used was like a theatre. So imagine you're watching a film and with all these events going on. That's what helped me. And this is where I think psychedelics are incredible, because you're able to take the emotions out of it and see things for what they are with a clear space, right?
Yeah, you can, but it depends what you're gonna use also. Like the reason why I love so much essentially like the big master plans like ayahuasca and everything else is because it's gonna take you to a place that you actually have to feel everything. That's the thing. without really having to think specifically what's happening and all that stuff, but actually release from your body what is stored. To give you an example, like on my, I think it was my second experience, like with ayahuasca, with a Colombian shaman that came to Australia and all the stuff. So I remember being on the floor inside the teepee, and all of a sudden, like the ayahuasca took me basically like to process the physical trauma that I've experienced through the accident. So I found myself for a full hour, I was just tremoring all over the place. So my body like was releasing like all the physical trauma from that experience. And every 5 minutes I will have this thing, like I would feel this thing coming up like really deep through my stomach, and all of a sudden will come out through yawning essentially. So it's one of the ways that we can release. And I kept going into that like for a full hour. And it was so weird for me at the time, because it was my first ever experience of having that big trauma release like from my body, and that actually shifted a lot of things for me. So I wasn't thinking anything at the moment like, oh, it's the accident or this and that. It actually came to me later, after the physical process actually like occurred, which is a very beautiful thing. And that's the amazing thing about those tools. They can really help you liberate like your system from very, very obviously deep-rooted patterns and traumas and everything else.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, because I remember in my ayahuasca experience, I was yawning so much.
Yeah. It's one of the. It can happen even on breath work. It can happen on a body work session. It's one of the ways we can actually like purge, like energy. Yeah,
wow, okay.
It can happen obviously through crying and like expressing the emotions. You can have the tremors. You can have like yawning. You can have sweating profusely. Like there's so many ways that the body will choose to discharge like the experience.
Okay. Yeah, and I think it's also so I think from my experience, it was you experience these intense emotions, right?
Yeah.
Quite a lot of the time. A lot of the time for me, it was love at the beginning. It was just so much love, and I think this is what happens in our society. We get so warped up in all this external shit that we don't forget that all this shit doesn't actually matter, and it brings us back to love, right? And after all these intense emotions, you've kind of, once you've got out your system, I think that's when, at least in my case, you could access your subconscious and then start looking at stuff without the emotions, right? So I think you have to go through that purge bit first, and then I think it gets really cool, because then you can access stuff, and then you're like, oh wow, and then you can just have access into your mind, and it's like just joining the dots. I think it's really powerful.
But that's the amazing thing about the human experience. Like it's so complex and fascinating and all that stuff. So when I feel when you wake up, for all of us, like and for me personally, from the moment you wake up, you cannot go back to your previous life essentially. So that way you are relating with yourself and the external environment changes completely. So you start actually to have like clear understanding of your body, and you start going deeper into that. You understand the signals that it sends you, like how you feel, the emotions and everything else. But then at the same time, if you start to actually do proper like psychological work, and you start working through subconscious, you start working through the unconscious mind, like you start actually to create so much more awareness, and your experience becomes richer essentially, like becomes so rich that it's just beautiful. Like I can't think of a better thing. Like it's such a beautiful thing. And every day, like you can create more awareness and everything else, and essentially you can just keep going deeper and deeper. It never ends. That's the beauty of it. It's a journey that you're gonna be doing for the rest of your life. There's no end goal that you have to pursue or anything like that. You're just in that state that you're constantly growing and understanding yourself until literally you die in physical form. It's a beautiful thing.
It really is. It really is. And that's a great point as well. There's always this idea of, okay, one day I'll get to this point where nothing bothers me and life is perfect. Like, it's a constant...
That's the ego talking. I've healed. How many times have you heard it from people? Yeah, I've healed all of my trauma. Really?
Yeah, and again, that feeling that you've touched upon there, it is really beautiful. You kind of just feel the sense of completeness almost.
Yeah.
I think it was really profound in my instance, because it's such a different feeling to before, when I thought I was happy. and I thought I was happy. But then actually, once you become more conscious, you realize, oh, actually, no, I had quite a fragile ego, even though I didn't realize it. But yeah, a lot of the time I was like hiding my emotions, and I built up all these layers over time. And yeah, I think a lot of people don't actually realize how many layers they've built up.
Yeah.
And it's just so beautiful, because once you work through all this stuff, it can be very challenging, right? But I think when you go through that, you can start to really appreciate the essence of life so much more, right?
100%, yeah. I completely agree with you.
Yeah, and I really believe that anyone can do that, but it's also important to acknowledge that, yeah, it is hard work sometimes. You know, you have got to face your fears.
It is hard work, like that's the thing, and we need to get to become okay that's how it's going to be, especially in the beginning. Because think about that, like if you are for 3 decades, you know, like you're going through life in that way, being unconscious and full of your pain and all the stuff, and essentially your unconscious mind basically guides your whole existence. When you start doing work on yourself, it's a big shock, because you're like, oh, I'm not who I thought I was. So now this is where actually like the beautiful experience starts of life. And it is hard work, because you have to feel emotions of unfelt emotions of decades, and pain, and even the good stuff also. Like, you know, a lot of the times there's so much suppressed joy and laughter that a lot of the times it will also come up, you know. So that's the thing. It is very, very intense and hard work. That's why it needs to be pursued like in a way that it's not gonna overwhelm you. I see a lot of the times like people, they start like going and doing 2-3 breathwork sessions a week, and medicine like every week or every month and all the stuff, and they just get this obsession like with healing. But essentially it's the ego trying to, you know, to create an identity from healing, essentially. So it's very important. That's why it's very important, like, to really get guided like the right way, so we can actually go according to how much we can handle and progress through the whole thing in a way that it's not gonna break us, essentially. Because I've seen so many people even around me, like literally losing their mind from the way they pursued.
Because they're getting all these answers at once, and it's like, oh, what do I need to do about this, and this, right?
Yeah. And there's the spiritual aspect of it also. You know, for example, like you see it in Ubud here in Bali, for example, like, you know, there's just so many people that they're so out of their body completely, and essentially like they create like this spiritual ego. They create an identity essentially from healing and from spirituality and all that stuff, and that just stay there. So they're bypassing properly doing that work.
Yeah, that's a great point that we can touch on, actually, because I feel like a lot of people who are maybe atheists or sort of against spirituality, they will be thinking of these types of people, right? Oh, but look at them, like they're strange, they're like not very nice people, and that's what they think of spirituality. Yeah. So I love that, you know, we've had a conversation that sort of bridges that gap, right? Like would you say that's just kind of like a spiritual ego? That's not representative of what it truly means to be connected?
Yeah, so what I essentially like teach and all the stuff is grounded spirituality, which essentially, yes, you are connecting with spirit and the divine, and you go through your process, but you're actually bringing it back inside your body, and you ground it essentially on your system. So you're not just staying up there, you know, like being completely out of your body and really in the ether, essentially, you know.
But it is an interesting point, though, because I feel like when you go on this journey, especially by yourself, you're going to feel at first quite disconnected from the earth.
Yeah, you're going to make that. Like, I've made all the mistakes, you know, like that's the thing. I've been that person also. But the problem is when you remain there. That's the problem. Like, because the ego makes an identity. And a lot of people get stuck on that because it's very, very hard. For me, I was lucky, I wouldn't say like, but, you know, like I recognized like when I actually became like that, and I did the best I could so I can actually like integrate my experiences properly, And the way I say it is basically land the plane. You have to land the plane, bro, at some point. Like, you can't stay too long for up there. That's the thing, you know.
Yeah.
Yes, the oneness is beautiful and all the stuff, but we have to bring it back into the 3D here and that duality of the human experience, you know.
That's a great
It's
point.
very important.
I've been talking about this with my girlfriend as well. I think, yeah. But I do want to touch upon this disconnection, though.
Yeah.
Especially because you said you thought you had a normal upbringing, you had these big revelations. Do you think it's normal for people to have a period of, right, they're feeling these emotions that are brought up and anger towards perhaps the world of, oh, wow, I've realized all these things? And how did you move past that in terms of like relationships or perspective on your parents? Because I feel like there is a lot of resentment there.
Yeah. And usually, like, resentment is what comes up, like, when you actually start the process, because you start seeing the impact that our parents essentially had on our life, essentially. And the first thing is actually the anger comes up. But it's actually the anger and the resentment that the inner child, which is a very important part of our psyche, essentially, that needs to express those emotions. So that's the thing. It's not about getting stuck in a victim mindset and blaming our parents. You did this to me and can't believe that, and and just get stuck on that. It's actually recognizing what happened to you, do the healing process with connecting with your inner child and actually allow it to express exactly what it's feeling. And then you do also the reparenting process, which is very, very important, because now we are the adult and we have to look after this young boy or young girl that we have inside. So going through this process is very important, and then you can properly, forgive the parents and actually come to the place that you did the best you could, and that's the reality. This is all they could do. The reason why a lot of us nowadays we're actually doing this work, it's because we do have the opportunity that they never had. So we're actually healing them at the same time and the generations before them, which is very empowering at the same time. But you cannot bypass that process. You have to go there and see the reality, feel the emotions, connect with your inner child, heal that relationship internally so you can actually, go closer to wholeness and integrate your inner child properly so you can actually experience life, in this beautiful state of curiosity and creativity and exploration, and then you go there. You can't bypass that and straight away, I understand, they did the best they could and that's it. You can't just do that. You have to do the process properly.
Wow, okay.
So this is I feel, a lot of the times, like, people get confused that I see a lot of people straight away, they go to the process of forgiveness without actually doing the rest of the work. And they think, now I've done it. You just can't do it like that. And I can actually bring an example of myself personally, because my experience was actually very intense. So when I started connecting with everything, what I did first of all was actually, like, I focused a lot on my dad, because that was my main thing. Because the way I was raised, my reality got denied completely, so I couldn't be myself. He couldn't see me, he couldn't understand me, and he forced me to be who he wanted me to be. So essentially, he tried to live through my experience, which made me consistently, basically, betraying myself and trying to be someone that I'm really not. So when I actually started understanding those things, obviously there's so much anger that came up and rage and everything else. I had so many fights on the phone and everything, and I disconnected, like, a lot from my family. And especially because I was away in Australia for 11 years, I didn't go back to see them for 11 years at all. So I was away from my family for all this time, and essentially what I realized, it was actually primarily because of that. It was also because I went through a lot of things and even more traumas and hard experiences there, but essentially it was that part. So I was ready to go and do my process essentially last year. I did it, like 13 months ago. So I went back for the first time after, like, all this time, after 11 years, and I had to face my dad. And I didn't just have to face my dad now as an adult, as two adults, but essentially I had to let my inner child express his experience to him. So when I sat down with him to do it, essentially I knew exactly what was going to happen, so my reality got denied again. So I didn't have expectations, and that was the hard thing for me. I was preparing myself to go there, so when he will essentially react, I wouldn't actually do the same. And what happened, because he denied my reality again, obviously like there was a lot of sadness and grief that came up. The next morning, I literally took myself in the mountains there in my city, and I went for this big walk, and essentially I had to let my inner child essentially express everything. So I was literally in the mountain crying and screaming, and I just let this process happen properly. And literally what happened next, the next day, I literally got sick. So I started getting symptoms of like my stomach was completely off, and essentially my body started like purging like for 3 days. And you know what I realized? All the problems that I had for years, like for fucking so long, like with bloating, always I was experiencing discomfort here. Essentially, as soon as I completed that process, everything was gone. And then I really understood why it's so fucking important to do this process properly. And you know what happened after that? I managed to face my dad again, despite like the conflict that we have and everything. And for the first time, he actually paused for a moment, and he started actually letting me in for a bit, because he realized I'm not this young boy anymore, I'm this big man. And essentially he softened also his defenses, and essentially we had this beautiful moment that I asked him essentially, Dad, how did it make you feel when I was actually expressing to you those things yesterday? And he goes to me with his eyes like ready to cry. I felt like you were stabbing me in the heart like with a knife. And I go, okay, like I hear you, like I see you, I understand that. But all I was trying to do is literally to express to you how I felt as a child. And through that conversation, essentially, at some point, he literally stopped me, and he literally asked me for a hug. So I had this beautiful moment where for the first time I was the adult and he was the child. So I could actually hold him. And that was such a healing experience. And I realized how important it was, because I was struggling for so long, and I've done all this work, but if I didn't go to face my dad and complete this process, I wouldn't be able to progress and achieve like the things that I want. It's almost like receiving the torch also from the dad, and you are the man now, and you're gonna continue that journey.
Well, yeah, that's a really powerful story. It's really got me thinking, because I this has come up quite a few times now. I've spoken to 3 or 4 people where I said, right, what did you do? Did you confront your dad? And they've all said, yeah, I confronted my dad. He was angry. There was this resentment, and then after a while, when things calmed down, they had the best relationship ever. And I really think these tough conversations are the conversations we need to be having. But that's interesting, because I've also met people who have been on this whole journey about their parents. They've had a realization that they weren't the people that they thought they were, and they've gone on their own sort of healing journey, if you like, and then come to another place without confronting them at all. So are you suggesting that method might not fully work then, or do you think there's still a place for, okay, maybe do you think that conversation needs to be had, or do you think people can go on their own journey without telling them how they feel?
Yeah, look, you can do that, but it also depends like what, relationship you have with your parents, the circumstances and everything. But the thing is, I do believe definitely that you need to have like that confrontation, and not actually have a fight, but actually properly connect with them and trying to resolve that and really heal that relationship. That's the thing. Because they are our parents, like, what's the point if we can't like really connect properly with them and really give them the gift also that this experience can be, because it can be very healing for them also at the same time, And again, not everybody can do it, because you have situations, like there's parents that there's no way that this can happen, and I understand that. So this is where you come into acceptance. Acceptance is the most important thing. Like it has to happen nevertheless. If I didn't accept also myself, who he is, where I'm at and all the stuff, and I didn't accept that, I will never get from him what I need, I wouldn't be able like to move through that. So that has to happen internally, and we have to do it alone. But then it's really up to you if actually that can happen, with your parents and all the stuff. If you can, go and do it. I definitely recommend that.
Yeah.
Because I've seen also so many times, a big thing that I have seen is actually people starting the journey and then they lose, one or the parents and all the stuff, they die and everything else, and they've never had the opportunity to do that. And then it literally eats them alive. So I've seen it so many times,
Yeah, and they wish they'd sort of said
and they wish, I wish I said what I needed to say and all that stuff,
Yeah, and I guess you can also help them move past that thought as well, right? So they can heal from that. So it's no matter what happens, I think you can always move past it. I think that's an important message to tell people as well, right?
100%. It's essentially like to show them that love, and no matter what happened, it's okay, That's the thing. You did the best you could and actually recognize that. Yeah,
I see it as expectations weren't met, and they were your expectations, even if you were like a kid, I find this stuff so fascinating. There's so many different sort of layers to this.
It never stops. I've been digging so deep, and I always find deeper layers.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. I really think this episode will help to give people, like a perspective on all this healing stuff and bring a bit more clarity. I feel like, and I think also just bridging that gap as well between sort of woo-woo shit and life here on Earth, which is super important. Before we close, we have three closing traditions.
Three closing traditions
on the podcast.
Yep.
The first two are the usual questions, and the third one is asked by a member of our audience.
Okay, I love that.
So we asked them on the Growth Voyage Podcast Instagram page for a question, and they get back to us, which is cool. The first question is a song suggestion.
A song suggestion? Oh, bro. Well, because it's actually very, very present on my mind, it will be Spirit Bird from Xavier Wood.
Okay, wicked. Which genre is it?
I don't know what would you consider it, really.
Okay.
But he's an amazing artist, and the song, like, it's very, very powerful, so
wicked. I look forward to listening to that. Number two is a book recommendation.
Ooh. Book recommendation, okay. Well, I will recommend now, there's so many books that I can recommend, but I will say now The Celestine Prophecy. It's actually a book that I read last month, like, for the first time, and it was written, I think, in the 60s or something like that, and it's just so relevant now, like, with what happens. Like, it's such a beautiful story with so many lessons. So it's an amazing book.
Okay,
so I recommend that.
Wicked. I can't wait to add it to my list. That's going to be awesome. Final one, we'll just go and find it. We've had a couple questions from David French already, one of our avid listeners. He's given us a set of different questions.
Okay.
So and they're great. So what we'll do now, we'll answer one of them, which is, how important is geographical location in regard to achieving your purpose?
Oh, look, that's a tough one. Like, if I see it from my experience, I was born in a city and a country that the opportunities that you can have and your ability to grow is very, very fucking low. And I realized that now when I went back last year. I see so many men like struggling there, and essentially, if you don't leave Greece, you will never do anything. I can guarantee you that. So, but yeah, man, like, for me, I feel you can succeed in any location, any area, and all the stuff. But obviously, there's situations that if you are born like in a third world country, we live in one like here now, and we get, you see it every day, like, people are so happy, but at the same time, there isn't this level of achievement and everything else. So it's all really, you know.
Well, then again, I suppose, if we were to think about, if he's talking about sort of achieving your purpose,
Yeah.
but then maybe a part of your purpose is to go through all the different layers of your ego, right, and connect to something greater. You could argue as well.
Yeah. And look, like because he's talking about purpose, and for me, I always, consider it like what your soul came here to learn and do and all that stuff. Everybody's is different. So if we go by that, you can achieve that as long as you actually connect with what's coming through, which is the spiritual component that we were saying.
Yeah, this is a big point. I think a lot of people are stuck on, how do I find my purpose?
Yeah. And they associate purpose also with achieving, like, for example, business and wealth and all that stuff. The purpose is something that is much deeper than that, than the superficial things.
So would your advice be just follow your sort of intuition, or do more inner work, and then the more inner work you do, the more you're going to find answers?
Yeah, it's essentially, connect with your spirit, bro. Connect with what's trying to communicate to you. That's the reality. This is where all the answers are. The answers are inside, they're not outside of us. That's the thing. So as soon as you stop looking externally to figure out things and you bring the attention inside, you will have all the answers.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, like we were saying, if people want to start looking inwards, I guess it can be, where would they start, do you think? Just, is it as simple as...
It doesn't really matter. Like, as soon as you start looking inside, it will lead you to wherever you need to go. That's it.
Wicked.
Because you're shifting completely, like, that way you engage with yourself,
Yeah.
And the more you look inside, you find way more things than what you're going to find out there, like, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I completely agree. This has been such an awesome episode, Theodoros. Thank you so much. Where can people find you if they're interested in what you post, your teachings, and also what you do for a living?
Yeah, let's say on Instagram with my name, essentially. If they put my name, like, that's essentially where I really communicate more and all the stuff. So that's where my work is.
And what do you do exactly for those who don't really understand it?
Well, just to put a label on myself, like, I had to to figure out something. Like, I struggle with trying to, to put a label on, because I do so many things. But essentially, I call myself a psychosomatic coach, which essentially, like, my expertise is in the connection between the mind and the body. The somatic, which essentially is the body, is my jam and what I'm trying to master, essentially. And I work in a very holistic way with people through coaching and healing sessions and everything else. So I have a lot of tools on my arsenal, and that's my work.
Wicked. Fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you, bro. Awesome. I really enjoyed it.
Most welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, bro.